saying, but maybe it hasn't quite permeated the minds of our listeners, and sometimes it takes someone else to say that.
I mean, that particular one.
We have been saying that we are making this referendum question much harder than it needs to be.
Yeah.
Because we aren't talking about a specific project. We aren't talking about a cost of that project. We're not even talking about a location of that project. The referendum question simply asks, should we move forward?
Yep.
And if it's a yes vote, then these conversations that we're trying to have now start all over again.
Right.
So when we do have those finer details. But from a no vote perspective, how would you answer the question of cost?
Okay. I think it would be surprising if in funding a cruise berthing initiative in the Cayman Islands, that the incoming government, whoever they may be, would do anything but go to the cruise lines and say, what you were proposing before, where the cruise lines put the money up, the cruise lines pay, in effect, the loan off by, but let me give you some examples. They will forego the cost of tendering. That money can then go into paying off the loan. And there were also discussions about increasing the per passenger fee over and above the difference between tendering, not paying tendering and so on, because of the enhanced experience and enhanced facilities and so on, that would have paid for the cruise berthing initiative. So there was never, under the last iteration, going to be a loan which the government of the Cayman Islands was undertaking to pay off.
No loan.
It was a fallacy to say the Caymanians would be saddled with all this debt, because that was not what was being proposed.
It was a lie.
You look at what the Verdant Isle Port Partners, that whole structure of what was being proposed, and it answers the question. So if you're asking me today what it will cost the government to build cruise berthing, A, there isn't a project out there, but B, I would be extremely surprised that any government would do anything different than go to the cruise line and say, guys, put the money up.
Yeah.
And then you find this mechanism, as we had developed before, to pay it off by bringing people here.
It would be nice if we did get a yes and we did start to move forward into having some, legitimate, productive conversations in terms of how we're going to develop it. Yeah. If we get those old deals back.
Yeah.
But this is where, and I have to say it again, this is where the hypocrisy of the CPR group really shines through. In the last iteration, you just mentioned it, Verdant Isle, where we were, again, 8 years ago. The same place we were is like deja vu. Yeah. But at the time, all of the questions that the CPR group are asking today, what's it going to cost? Who's going to pay for it? Where's it going to be? All of those questions were answered. And at that time, it was still a hard no, we don't support it. So what has changed?
Hold a minute. There was a hard no from certain people in certain sectors.
Yeah.
But this nation never has had the opportunity to vote on it.
Nope.
Which is why we're saying today, you got a problem, you think you should vote no? Call us, let's talk, let's understand what it is that's making you think you should vote no to that simple, straightforward question. And then some people say, well, yeah, but let me just play the devil's advocate, and I know the devil don't need no advocate, I don't give him any. But let us just say the counterfactual position, right? Let's say that you're worried that, you vote yes now, and the government's going to come in and just go straight bulldozer ahead, do whatever they think they should do, take on, millions of dollars of debt and all this kind of thing. Let me tell you something.
You ain't got it.
Let me just tell you a simple fact facing every one of us that has the opportunity to go in and cast our ballot. Number one, we better do it. And number two, we better make sure we elect a government that has good sense. Because if you don't elect a government that's going to act appropriately and have good sense, cruise berthing is going to be least of your worries.
Your lips to God's ears.
Yep.
Your least of your worries. So come on, get real, right? And folks saying, well, I don't trust that the government will do this. If you don't trust the government,
we're in trouble already.
To do sensible things, to act in the best interest of this nation, and do the things we need to get done, cruise berthing isn't your biggest problem.
Right.
Right? You need to get out there and vote and make sure that we get a government that will take a yes answer and do the proper things with it,
Right.
and do the proper research, and come up with what's going to be the best. Let me just say something else.
Mm-hmm.
It is a false narrative that we have a binary choice between you can have cruise berthing or you can have an environment. Nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? That is nonsense. And there's example after example that you can go and you can see the coexistence of a nice, beautiful underwater marine environment, beaches, cities, when it is approached in a responsible manner. And we, in 2025, have the advantage now of being able to look back at different things, different technologies, different designs, right? To give you an example, I was talking with some engineers. I've been talking with some engineers that are into designing different technologies for building piers for cruises, right? Open your mind a little bit to imagine. Suppose you can design a pier that uses pilings, which we all, there's been a lot of discussion about why pilings are excellent, because everything, the current still flow, the sand moves wherever the sand wants to move. It doesn't impede any of that. It doesn't create a monolithic structure on the seabed and all that kind of things. Just put pilings. And imagine that if what you had on those pilings was a surface that was floating but rigidly held in place laterally by pilings, okay? Suppose that has been done and proven in areas where you get serious storms and has been there for years now, serving the cruise tourism industry, serving cruise ships, berthing alongside. And suppose I can tell you that several of those have been built in water depths over 100 feet.
That's right.
Right? So if you got water depth 100 feet, by the way, you don't do any dredging.
No.
That is not a depth of water you need to dredge. I'm saying that we need to wise up and realize we're in 2025.
No.
We've got experienced port builders and designers that now have options to build a port that will not destroy our environment, to operate a port in a way that would not destroy our environment. And you may have heard me talk before at previous public meetings about this famous 1,500% overstatement of what would be the impact. And literally, I'm talking about 100. It was 15 times the amount of impact that they were talking about in terms of what they were modeling to stir up the seabed than what would really happen.
Yeah.
Right? And that's talking about the thruster operation for a docking-undocking operation being three thrusters, three bow thrusters at 100% power for 15 minutes. And
it'd be a hurricane.
When you actually involved the captains of these ships who do this docking and undocking, and they said the most you're going to have is a total of 60 seconds in short bursts of 50% power.
Yeah.
For what they would have to do in Cayman.
Nothing.
So, it was way overblown. And I just wanted it. We need to shatter that myth that we have a binary choice, that all you can either have a great environment underwater, great for diving. I'm a diver myself. I don't want to give that up, right? Or you can have cruise berthing. That is not the choice we have to make. We have to choose, do we want a cruise tourism industry or not? Because you can look around you and a blind man on a fast horse can see if you do not put in cruise berthing, you're going to lose the cruise industry. We're already down from 2018 to 2024 by 45% in terms of cruise visitor arrivals.
Indeed. Mr. Miller, any comments with 2 minutes remaining before I go to the break?
I was agreeing with Timmy, completely on this. I mean, and this is the biggest problem that we have is just these people will not listen. How many times have we told them we're not going to get a loan? Where are we going to get the loan from? There's no money in the government. The government's not going to be able to do it. Mm-hmm. So why do they keep bringing up something that doesn't make any sense?
Well, it's not relevant to the question that is presently on the table.
It's not relevant to the question. That's not what we're asking.
Yeah.
But they keep pushing that to just blow it out of proportion.
Indeed.
But there's nothing there.
We have 2 more questions, and again, it's coming from the no bracket, which is what we want.
Yes,
and again, though, I just add to the fact that in 2008, 2009, when the PPM brought this through, the Honorable Moses Kirkconnell through Verdant Isle, again, it was a very lengthy document. We went on they went on the roadshow campaign. It was everywhere.
Yep.
When the information that the CPR and Sustainable Cayman groups are asking for today, they're saying are absent from the question that the present administration is asking. When it was provided, it was still a no. So what is the difference today when it's not provided? It is pure and unadulterated hypocrisy, and also not relevant to the question
red herring
that is being asked on the table. The question is simply this: do we remain in cruise tourism? Do we develop cruise berthing infrastructure? If it is a yes, then we start going down through the details, the where, the how, the when, the how much, etc., and re-engage this conversation all over again. It is that simple. We are making this question much harder than it needs to be at this stage. At 58 minutes past the hour of 5 o'clock, we have to pause and take a short commercial break. Check in with the BBC News, but our conversation with Mr. Tim Adam and David Miller continues when Straight Talk returns on Bobo 103.1 FM.
Bobo.
BBC News.
BBC News.
World news from the BBC. Violent clashes.
Thick black smoke.
A tremendous legal victory.
Crucial elections.
Destructive win.
A search and recovery
A
operation.
race against time.
An imminent threat.
Flying a drone over a rival team's training session.
Whatever is happening, wherever it's happening, catch up with the latest news bulletins from the BBC.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM. The BBC is the world's most trusted news source. And Bobo 103.1 is where you'll find the BBC World Service.
BBC News. The world news from the BBC.
And the home of Cayman's most listened to talk shows.
That's right, folks. Everyone is telling their mama about the cold hard truth.
And welcome to Straight Talk. I'm your host, Austin Harris.
And I'm Ellio Solomon.
Across Cayman, on FM, online, and on your smart speaker. This is Bobo 103.1.
The BBC's From Our Own Correspondent.
In today's Russia, no one is allowed anywhere near the political stage if they pose a serious challenge to Vladimir Putin.
Stories and reflections from our reporters around the world.
There is a major sense of insecurity here. More people are coming in from Sudan every day.
From Our Own Correspondent from the BBC.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM. This is Bobo 103.1, powered by Health Services Authority. At Health Services Authority, they are committed to caring for you. They are Cayman's largest and longest-standing healthcare provider, offering the most comprehensive range of inpatient, outpatient, and public health services at 9 different locations across all 3 islands. Across Cayman on 103.1 FM, online, and on your smart speaker. The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo 103.1.
BBC News with Sue Montgomery. President Trump has accused Volodymyr Zelensky of harming peace negotiations after the Ukrainian leader said he could never recognize occupied Crimea as Russian territory. Speaking on Wednesday in the Oval Office, Mr. Trump said he thought a deal could be achieved soon.
I think Russia is ready, and a lot of people said Russia wanted to go for the whole thing. And I think we have a deal with Russia. We have to get a deal with Zelensky, and I hope that Zelensky, I thought it might be easier to deal with Zelensky. So far it's been harder, but that's okay. It's all right. But I think we have a deal with both.
Our diplomatic correspondent is James Landale.
This is two things. One, the Americans trying to put pressure on the Russians and the Ukrainians to move. One of the problems, I think, with all these negotiations, there haven't been any real hard deadlines. So to a certain extent, that's a sort of, to try to generate some momentum in the negotiations. Also, I think it is just an expression of frustration. This is an administration that wants to move fast. It seems unaware that most peace talks and negotiations take months, if not years. It wants all of this sorted in weeks and is expressing its impatience.
Vatican police say St. Peter's Basilica will stay open all night, so the large crowd outside can file past the coffin of Pope Francis. At midnight, when the church was supposed to close, there was still a long queue of people waiting to pay their respects. Some said they came in the late evening expecting a shorter wait, only to find the opposite. Delhi is closing its main border crossing with Pakistan in response to the killings of more than 20 of its citizens by Islamist separatists in Indian-administered Kashmir on Tuesday. All military advisors in Pakistan's High Commission in Delhi have been asked to leave within the week. A manhunt for the gunmen is continuing. Akib Chaya is a hotel owner in the region.
I just have two emotions at the moment. One is grief and the second is anger. We have been repeatedly telling the government since yesterday to give us some kind of a retaliation. The perpetrators need to be caught. They need to be brought to the books. They have killed our fellow countrymen. They have killed our Kashmiriyat, which we call. They have killed our hospitality. We are famous in the world for hospitality. They've also killed that.
A former U.S. Army intelligence analyst has been jailed for 7 years for passing sensitive defense information to China. Sergeant Corbin Schultz, who held a top-secret security clearance, pleaded guilty. The U.S. Justice Department said he shared at least 92 classified military documents in exchange for $42,000. World News from the BBC. The authorities in Benin say Islamist insurgents killed 54 soldiers last week in an attack near the borders with Burkina Faso and Niger. It's the deadliest known attack since insurgents began operating in northern Benin at the beginning of the decade. Police in Brazil have launched an investigation into allegations that corrupt officials have siphoned off $1.1 billion in unauthorized deductions from pensions over the past 6 years. The head of the State Pension Institute and 5 other officials have been suspended. Federal police officers have served more than 200 search warrants across the country. Scientists believe bite marks found in the skeleton of a Roman gladiator are the first site in the north of England, believed to be the world's only well-preserved Roman gladiator cemetery. The scientists led the study said it was strawberry cake. Stretching nearly 122 metres and weighing more than a tonne, it took the chefs a week to construct, using 4,000 eggs and a truckload of sugar and cream. The gâteau was put on display at an ice rink in Paris before being cut up to feed visitors viewing the spectacle. Anouk de Timery was the judge for Guinness World Records.
The main criteria for this record to be validated are that the final strawberry cake respects the traditional recipe, that it is composed of cream, strawberries and a biscuit base, and I also check that the overall result is uniform, that there is no separation between the different cakes.
BBC News.
The views and opinions expressed on Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio do not necessarily reflect or represent the views of Stingray Media, its staff, or contributors. Callers to the program accept full responsibility for the views expressed. The show host and affiliates are not liable for any statements made or any harm claimed. All callers to the program indemnify Straight Talk from all claims. Offensive, defamatory, or unlawful content will not be tolerated. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Now, here's Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio on Bobo 103.1.
And welcome back, K-Man, to more Straight Talk here on Bobo 103.1 FM and simulcasting again on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. Apologies to some members of our listening audience. Both our YouTube, well, all of our streaming video had dropped off there for a second, but they should be back up and running now. If you have any problems, just send me a WhatsApp message and let me know, and I'll send you a new link if necessary. But thankful to our team at Monster Media and NetClues for working behind the scenes, and also to the listening audience for notifying us in the first place that there was a problem. But that problem has since been resolved, and we're back. In studios with us today, Tim Adam, Mr. David Miller. Between them, over 50 years of tourism experience in these Cayman Islands. And if you take their family history in consideration, that's over 100 years of tourism experience. We really couldn't afford to pay for this kind of knowledge that we are getting here today, and we are grateful to our guests. As we started, today's show is dedicated to those listeners in the listening audience who, if the referendum were tomorrow, would vote no as their on our WhatsApp line, 928-2562. If we know why, then maybe we can attempt to explain or answer some of your questions with the view of transitioning that no into a yes. 745-2626 is the number. Again, going to WhatsApp, we've got two questions, which largely I think they're related, so we're going to tie them together. The first question is, how many ships is ACT hoping to accommodate for any proposed piers? And what does ACT anticipate as Cayman's minimum carrying capacity and maximum carrying capacity? Outside of the fact that these questions have zero bearing on the question that will be asked at the referendum in 2025, but for the benefit of the fact that it is still a question, gentlemen, how would you respond?
Well, we have actually handled up to 18,000 people in Georgetown, and we ain't got no dock, so we have South Terminal, North Terminal, Cargo Dock, and Royal Watler. But the ships, weren't all in at the same time. You'd have like 3 coming in, and then, by 11 o'clock, they were, just coming in again. So the ones that came from 6 o'clock in the morning were getting ready to leave. So you didn't have an actual 18,000 people at one time. So, 9,000 people going in and back, coming, and the next one going, that's basically what they were doing. So 18,000 shouldn't be a problem.
All right. Yeah. Fair enough. Appreciate that. Mr. Adam, any addition?
Well, I think that what we preface everything with exactly what you said is the question right now is, should we have cruise berthing infrastructure at all?
Yes.
And then if we're going to do that, then plan where's the best place to deploy that infrastructure, where to put it, how many ships to go on each one. Last time around, when the analysis was done, it made sense that you should put in the berthing to accommodate 4 ships, up to 4 ships at a time. And I would suggest that probably if you looked at it again, it's going to come out somewhere around that number. That for cost effectiveness, for practicality, for your flexibility as to how you can accommodate best, giving the best experiences and so on, it's somewhere around that number.
Yeah.
But if you configure it where they're not all, you could broaden how many ships you can accommodate comfortably and still deliver an excellent experience. The idea in this, is to upgrade the guest experience.
Yes.
Right?
That has to be the goal.
You've got to upgrade the guest experience.
And just putting on my ACT hat for a minute, I think I'd like to also add to my colleagues' responses by saying that I think it's important to understand that if we get a yes in the vote, it means that's a green light for discussion.
Yes.
No, as you've stated, is no discussion. And I can assure you that any responsible government, and I encourage people to have trust in those persons who they elect, it is the only persons they can hire, it is the only persons they can fire, it is the only ones who can really, truly act on their behalf. You can't fire the civil servants. It's the governor's purview. But let me just say, any responsible government is going to come in and engage in that discussion. And of course, they would know if they get a yes vote that one of the concerns is that we're not overcrowded. And so for that reason alone, they're going to simply get up and say, let's do an analysis. Let's see what the infrastructure can bear. And it's important to understand that government can set that ceiling wherever they want. We had Mr. Giora Israel who came here in the studio. If government gets up and says no cruise ships on Saturdays or Sundays, there's no cruise ships on Saturdays and Sundays.
Yep.
If they get up and say we're capping at 12, we cap at 12, So where it might take right now 4 smaller ships, for example, to make 12, then you might end up with 2 mega that gives you 12. So it is important to understand that the government will have the ability to be able to make that determination.
Absolutely. I thank you for making that point.
If I may, I would add one more interesting element to this, is that when you have cruise berthing facilities here, the cruise lines themselves will alter their schedule as to their itineraries, as to how they sail, where they sail, and when they land in Grand Cayman.
That's right.
Because guess what? If you've got cruise berthing in Cayman, then they have an incentive to come on a day when they can get to a berth.
Yeah.
And so they spread it out instead of everything coming on a Wednesday and a Thursday. Or not everything, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Right? You get that concentrated massive ships on a couple of days. Because right now they have no incentive to come on a different day.
Nope.
But if it's a choice between, if I go to Grand Cayman today, all 4 berths are already committed, and that means I'm going to have to tender, or I can be intelligent with the itinerary and come on a different day when I can get alongside, you're going to spread out the guest arrivals off of cruise ships because you're going to spread out how the itinerary planners plug in Cayman into their overall offering.
Indeed.
That's what I mean there?
Yeah, make perfect sense.
But right now they have no incentive to do any special alteration of itineraries as to what day they come here. Just all come because they all got a tender anyway.
That's right.
There's no advantage to coming on a different day.
And again, as we state, the fundamental point behind all of this is that these are discussions that would begin if
you got a yes.
The residents, the people of this country, the registered voters said yes on the referendum, and that won by a majority. That is all. All of this can start afresh with details. I don't have a lot of confidence that CPR and Sustainable Cayman will change their answer any different.
They're not gonna change.
History has shown me that it's impossible, but we remain hopeful. There is one other critique, and you put it this way. I think it was you, David, when we talked about Caymanians and new Caymanians. When we look at the opposition to the cruise berthing infrastructure question, it's very polarizing, hands down. So much so that it's almost an uncomfortable conversation because you don't know if your neighbor is for it or against it, and you don't want to create those rifts because you got to live next to the guy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that perhaps is one of the reasons maybe we have some of the usual suspects talking on this subject for both sides, but not a wide, populace engaging that conversation. But that being said, one of those persons is not a new Caymanian, but is a generational Caymanian. I want to preface it by saying that I have as much respect for this gentleman as I have for either of the two of you. He is one of our own.
Yeah.
But he is one of our own that I do not agree with.
Exactly.
But we can disagree without being disagreeable. And I'm referring to my very good friend and somebody that, was a father figure to me when I grew up in this country, Captain Brian Ebanks. Captain Brian has always opposed the notion of cruise berthing, specifically in Hogstye Bay, Georgetown. I don't believe he's opposed to it entirely or universally as a viable or necessary development, but perhaps somewhere else. And one of the reasons he was recently quoted or videoed for the other side on social media is that he made the comment that by building a pier, if we use the word, but all of life that exists in downtown Georgetown will also be gone. I can't even begin to answer the ludicrous nature of this question, so I'll turn it over to you. What are your thoughts on those remarks?
Well, if we take 2004 and we're looking at Hurricane Ivan came from the southeast, was coming straight line from Jamaica, and as it came to our area, remember that had a 60-foot wave in front of it, right? So it was going east to west, right? Well, from southeast going to west, northwest. So I'm sitting there and I'm trying to figure out where he got this idea that that's going to have a problem. The problem was the south side of Grand Cayman. It's also the south side of Cayman Brac, and it was also the south side of Little Cayman. Traditionally, every time we get a hurricane hitting anywhere or wherever, it's the south side. It's not the north side, and it's not the west side. So it's always coming east to west because it's a trade wind. But when you're coming in through, like what we saw with Hurricane Ivan, Georgetown was unblemished, untouched. I remember seeing Cap Neldon. I said, Cap Neldon, how you doing? And he says, my house lost its shingles. I said, but Georgetown looks okay. I said, Bayshore is untouched. Nothing happened. So where he's getting this idea that a hurricane is going to affect Georgetown, I don't know, because that was one of the worst hurricanes of the century. Now, the next place that it hit after it was leaving is it started to swing in a little bit more into that northwest, and it hit Bonnie, Clan Creek, and Dolphin Point. They had 20-foot waves that hit that 3 condominiums. Nowhere else in that side of the island was hit by Hurricane Ivan. Now, I know that 20-foot waves came across there, but let me explain something to you. I have a cousin that lives across the street there. She has a 2-story house with a white roof on it. And I asked her, I said, Lisa, is everything okay? And she said, no, everything is fine. I said, but there was a 20-foot wave across the street. She says, can you believe it? And we didn't even get a drop of water in our yard. And I go like, really? And I looked at it, and I kept looking at it, and I'm going, Jesus, I can't imagine. The reason that water didn't go across the street in West Bay in the Northwest Point area was the way how the land slopes to the sea. If you go to, you can't do it to Dolphin Point anymore because, what's his name, Imperato has changed that. He made that up 20 feet higher. But Clan and Bonnie, you can see that it slopes down at an angle that as the water comes in, is doing the same thing like it would do on a beach. Water comes in, drops its sand, and goes back out to the ocean, maintaining the 7 Mile beach area. That's what we have to protect, right? So I don't know where he got that idea, but Georgetown is safe. There ain't no problem with the hurricane.
I can add something that might help. You remember the Baird environmental statement? It's still available on the EIA section, environmental impact assessment section of the DOE website. Is that if you look in there, you will find there was a very thorough analysis done of what would be the impact of putting in that particular design. Now, again, I preface all this, we do not have a particular design that this referendum question is asking about. It's saying, should we build it at all? But even that design, that was thoroughly studied as to what is going to be its effect on waves, patterns, and flooding, all those sorts of things. If you put this in, is it going to devastate Georgetown if you get a hurricane? You can read it for yourself. They did that analysis. It's not going to destroy Georgetown. And the engineers and the scientists involved in that did quite a thorough bit of work on it. There's so many hundreds of pages of research that are already done on that proposal. But at best, it's just an example. And if anything, we could do even better than that. You know what I mean?
Yes.
No, it is, right? So these things that are coming out about someone imagining that it's going to destroy Georgetown or it's going to destroy the marine environment, all those things that have already been carefully poured over and figured out how to do this without destroying what we have in Cayman, but rather enhancing it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And again, you talk about not destroying, enhancing. We've been talking about we don't need to go far. We can see it online, St. Martin, St. Lucia, the Bahamas, Cozumel. They all have cruise berthing piers, and we can see firsthand, go online, how those piers interact with their environment around them.
No problem.
But we don't have to go that far because my colleague shared. We've talked about it, but whilst you were away, just for one day, he stopped off in Cayman Brac, took a picture of the cargo dock, which is a platform-top pier piling cargo port that has been in existence for, I don't know how long, fellas, a long time.
It's working fine.
It is working just fine. It has not destroyed the marine environment. It has not impacted the movement of current or sediment, and it has proven to have, like the wrecks that we put down on purpose, it has added to the marine ecosystem, not taken away.
Absolutely. I want to just add a couple of things to complement what these gentlemen has been saying. I mean, first of all, when we talk about a hurricane hitting us, I think it's important, as he referred to the Bear report, to look even at how the design of those piers went out and then turned to the northwest. Amongst other things, navigating away from pristine coral. In addition to that, going in the northwesterly direction, that in the event that you get the typical nor'wester, which is what that area has to deal with, the water runs along with it as opposed to perpendicular against it and minimizing the possibility of damage. But when he talks about a hurricane hitting us, I'll never forget Hurricane Ivan driving out east. And I remember at the time praying and thanking God and saying, thank God this did not hit the West Coast.
Yes.
So let's just be clear about this.
Sir.
If any Hurricane Ivan or any real hurricane hits us on the West Coast, it's not the dock we're going to have to worry about. Okay? We're going to have a lot more to worry about than the dock.
You see them tall buildings that we seem to be so prone to building?
And all this financial services, this financial services and beach and stuff that we depend on, there'll be a lot more to worry about.
It's going to be the problem.
It will not be the problem, I assure you. One more thing I wanted to say, was this. I've also heard him and others who say about the sand drift. And I found a report. It was commissioned by the Department of Environment, specifically the Erosion Committee, I think it was. Dr. Richard Seymour, 2000. You can look that up. Found again that the sand drift is coming north-south, northwest direction. So that's why the northwesters supposedly replenish the beach. It's not coming from the south.
No.
This is in the report, Dr. Richard Seymour, commissioned by the Department of Environment in 2000.
Gentlemen, we have run out of time. I certainly wish this conversation can keep going, but I want to give you some time for some closing comments. if I can encourage you, Mr. Adam, and you, Mr. Miller, in your closing remarks, whatever they may be, to speak perhaps on what is at stake. What are the consequences if we end up with a no vote, which essentially says don't develop it, which means the end of cruise tourism in the Cayman Islands? Who wants to go first? Mr. Miller, you go first.
I'll go first. I think that a lot of people don't understand what we're getting into here. You know, as I was explaining, the other time when Ron Kipp decided to go in, and he goes, well, how did that happen? He says, I don't know, but I'm just telling you, the boat sank. And then he floated it back on, and then the next day, the other boat sank. And then it kept on going like that for weeks. One boat would sink, then the next boat would sink, then the next boat would sink, and they keep fixing them. It was a very, very dumb thing. They just put water, let the water come in through the exhaust funnel, the pipe that goes out from the engine. Very easy. You have to understand that you are hurting people who have mortgage loans, bank loans for cars, trucks, boats, buses. You got to be careful. You're going to destroy the hope and the security of our Caymanian people. There's 2,536 people, and a large portion of that is Caymanians. So let's be careful what we're doing here, because you're going to evict a lot of people.
All right.
We're not going to work for $6 an hour.
Thank you, Mr. Miller, for your time and for your participation. Mr. Adam, quick to you.
I'd like, if I may, to close off with some hard data. Compare the labor force survey report spring 2024 with the labor force survey report for spring. So the industry sector is called transportation and storage. We have 453 fewer Caymanians now employed in that sector as of the 2024 spring survey than 2018. 454. Those are real people who used to be in that and are no longer in it, just with what has occurred already with the downturn in cruise tourism. Remember, we said 45% down. In arts, entertainment, and recreation, another 144 fewer Caymanians. And other service activities, 240 fewer Caymanians in 2024 than in 2018. And look at how our population has grown since then.
Wow. Amazing.
And it boggles the mind for those who would want to portray that there really hasn't been a downturn in cruise tourism, and then those who pretend that it isn't because of a lack of cruise berthing. If it wasn't a lack of cruise berthing that caused it, explain this to me. In 2024 versus 2019, a survey of different Caribbean destinations, the Cayman Islands was the bottom of the table. Our cruise tourism was down 41.2%, comparing 2024 versus 2019, when Caribbean-wide had increased by 14.5%. And our neighbor Jamaica, which, by the way, has suffered because we don't have cruise pairs, they're missing out on some itineraries. But, because where we are, we're neighbors.
We're in the middle.
Yeah, in the Northwest Caribbean. So some ships that would have otherwise gone to Jamaica and Cayman don't bother come this way.
Nope.
They go in a different direction. Jamaica, the closest one that is down 19.4%, and partly influenced by what's happening in Cayman. And Cayman is 41.2%. And you think it's not because of lacking cruise pairs? Come on, wake up and smell the coffee, right?
Yep.
So there are hard data out there for anybody who is willing and intellectually honest enough to look at it. That's why today we invited, if you got a concern that will make you vote no, let us know. And we have been addressing those questions all the way through. I thank you for hosting this, for putting that out there, because now, we're saying that, how many calls did we get? None, right?
Nothing.
How many questions did we get? Just a handful.
3.
Right?
That means we're getting it. Yeah. That means we're getting it.
Itself. There were no really good reasons to vote no.
Nope.
Indeed. Mr. Adam, Mr. Miller, I thank you very much for your time. I want to give my colleague, with a minute left in time, to give our vote of thanks and close out the show.
Yeah, so I just want to thank you. I want to get to that song, Mr. Harris.
We're not going to have time. We got a minute left.
Oh, my. Either way, gentlemen.
I like that song.
I love that song. But either way, gentlemen, I want to thank you very much for coming in the studio. You are a wealth of knowledge and wonderful personalities, to say the least. And I did a private interview one time with Mr. Tim Adam on the vision thing, and I definitely have to do the same with you, Mr. Miller. Thank you both very much. You've made a wonderful contribution to this country, and definitely a wonderful contribution to this program.
Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for tuning in to your favorite talk show host right here on your new favorite talk show, Straight Talk. We want to thank you very much for joining in, and we'll see you here tomorrow right here on Straight Talk.
Indeed. And just with a few seconds remaining, just to fill that gap, tomorrow, obviously, an opportunity for us to continue our political conversations. On Friday, we will host Ms. Ellio Welcome from Georgetown North. You want to be here for that. But Straight Talk continues, as my colleague said, tomorrow, right here on Bobo FM.
The home of the BBC World Service, the most trusted news source in the world. This is Bobo 103.1. The following commercial messages are brought to you exclusively by Stingray Media.
What's that? No sugar, same amazing taste? Coca-Cola Zero Sugar is here to stay. Classic taste, pure satisfaction. Be sure to stop into any Tortuga location and get your own case of Coke Zero. Or grab an ice-cold one straight from the cooler. Brought to you by Tortuga Distributors Limited.